So my friend here, who I met maybe 20 minutes ago now, we've had some really interesting conversations, really deep and thoughtful conversations. She's willing to join me in another one about why society is lost. And here we go. So, if you don't know why you get out of bed every morning, and you're feel free to disagree, right? If you don't know why you get out of bed every morning, you are lost. Most people live lives of quiet desperation. And by the way, I'm just going to say one paragraph and see what you think.
Okay, yeah. I'm just saying to go to the loo.
Okay. What I mean is some sort of direction in your life.
Go to work.
Okay. So most people live lives of quiet desperation, doing jobs they hate, to buy things they don't need, to impress people they do not care about. They live for the weekend, but as they've spent the whole week being a slave, who they bring to meet their friends on the weekend will still be a trained puppy, a shadow of their real selves, still a slave. So, did you understand what I meant by that?
People who worship Mammon would lead this kind of life. The worship of Mammon is, well...
Mammon as in the worship of material things. Okay. So, great. I agree with that. So, would you say that if you don't have direction in your life, then you pick jobs that don't necessarily make you happy, and there are people who are doing that on a regular basis, and that's one of the reasons for depression rising rapidly in the West?
Yes, I think perhaps having direction will make our suffering more meaningful. And I suppose if you believe in God, you are more likely to accept suffering and boredom more philosophically, because you would assume that this life is a test and we're not here just to have fun.
Right, okay. I was thinking of going by my script, but I don't know. Okay, so what I was trying to say in my script, I'll paraphrase, besides what I've already said about the meaningless jobs, and everything becomes meaningless if you've already accepted there is no meaning. So if you say there's no God, you cannot, and everything is random, by default you're saying there is no meaning. You cannot create meaning when you've already said there is no meaning.
Well, you could say that the meaning of life is really a question about the purpose of our lives, and we need to decide what the purpose of our lives is. I guess if you believe in God, it would be to get to heaven when we, after we are dead, and therefore what we do in this life is about obeying the laws of God. And if you're an atheist, it would be about having fun before you die. So you would be programmed to act in a totally different way depending on whether you believe in God or not.
Okay, yeah. Program, that's an interesting word. So we can self-program, and how we experience life is not just so how do we experience that? How the amount of suffering we have is dependent on how we view life. So if, for example, you are doing a job you think makes the world a better place, that makes that job more bearable, even enjoyable. But if you don't care about making the world a better place, that same job is just misery. Does that make any sense?
Indeed, I think of people who have this, this really weird job description. You ask them what they do, and they're your friends, and they give you some long-winded, explanation and job title, and you're none the wiser. And next time, you might be introducing another friend to them, and you know they told you, you asked that question, but you still have no idea what they do. And I find people with jobs like that are not happy with their jobs because they themselves don't really know what it's for. I once had a conversation with a very attractive woman who obviously went to a good university. She was working for, I think she said HSBC or some other bank, and she said, I have no idea why they have me there, and I was thinking perhaps to decorate the place, and then as the party progressed, she drank more and more and became more and more unhappy and actually rather argumentative with another woman who had already had 5 children. And I think maybe it's because a lot of women are denying their maternal instinct and their desire to get married and forced into doing jobs they don't like, and letting the best years of their lives go by. And by the time they realise their error, they've hit 30.
So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was talking about people doing jobs they hate, and there's a statistic that says 50% of people in the UK hate the jobs they do. But then there's the other side of the coin, where not everybody should be part of industry. Taking care of children is a beautiful thing. Taking care and raising the next generation of human beings must have some value. It can't just be to work for HSBC is the pinnacle of life.
Yes, indeed, and if women are lucky enough to marry a man they love, he can be their boss.
What a more kind boss can you expect than the one who loves you already, who's already told you you love, rather than the boss who doesn't care about you and you're only there for the pay packet. So, very wise. Thank you very much for that. So what I want to get to is why society is lost, and I'm going to go through the 4 steps. That was kind of like an introduction, that people are doing meaningless things that they hate, and how do we overcome that? And so I'm going to quote a verse from the Holy Quran. It says, people are lost except those, and these are the 4 steps, and we'll discuss the 4 steps, those who believe and do good deeds and share the truth and teach patience. Now you might say, what has that got to do with anything? I'll give a really short summary. It says, the steps are basically, if you want to not be lost, then you have to know the path, as it were. The path, or a clear direction. And then number 2, you have to walk that path. You can't just simply know it and have a theoretical idea of the answers. You have to walk that path. And if that path is love, because that's the most beautiful way to grow, okay, and that's all religions are really about love, because God doesn't need anything. All religions are about how to treat other people and treat them better. So if that path is love, then should it not be by default that you should share that path with others? Not force that path, but at least share those ideas for free. Now, if you don't do that, we were talking about the consequence of that, like what does it mean about your understanding of the path? And then finally, and this might sound a bit more, I don't know what the word is, mystical, you need to become the path. That's the final stage. So basically, people look to you and they go, right, this is the way, right? And those 4 steps, believing, doing good deeds, sharing the truth, and teaching patience. And you might say the word patience is a very basic translation of the Arabic word, which I'm going to come to. That's the overview. She just said the Arabic word for sabr, which is absolutely right, sabr. How do you know that?
I pick these things up.
We were meant to talk. I have chills. Okay, because we're going to talk about that word. Okay, step 1. Know the path. To believe in Islam is to know the rules of life. These are rules based on not based on blind belief, but based on evidence. And we talked about that a little bit in the other video, where there are things, all the teachings of Islam are beneficial to human beings. Congregating, even circumcision, which is often made fun of, now science is telling us is good for us. Fasting, science tells us is good for us, and all the Muslims here, pretty much all the Muslims here are fasting. And it's a rare thing now, relatively rare thing, except for, let's say, health extremists or health enthusiasts, right? So not many other people fast besides the Muslims. Okay. Let me see what I've got here. That is hard for most people to realize that they were wrong their whole lives. So to believe is difficult if you have to accept that you've made a mistake in your life, right?
Yes.
But being wrong is not so bad if we are smart enough to realize we start from knowing nothing, so we start from being wrong and only work on being less wrong. Does that make any sense? We should assume we weren't born all wise, all intelligent.
Or
So
will be God.
yeah, exactly. So it shouldn't be. I'm just trying to make it easier for people to accept truth by saying you shouldn't think you know it all already, because that will be logically weird to think you know everything already to start off with. Life's a journey. I'm learning. Hopefully you're learning. You seem to know a lot of things. You seem to be doing a lot of learning. I'm very impressed already. Okay. So, knowing the path, I'm not going to go into the detail of the Quran and all the Quranic teachings. All I'll say is that, first of all, there's no compulsion in matters of religion. That's a verse of the Holy Quran. So there's no force, and do be open to the ideas of the Quran, which if you go through them, you'll find all of them are benefit to you as a human being and as society. That's number one. So step 2, walk the path. Okay, believing is not enough. Just knowing the path is not good enough. You have to walk the path. Have you ever watched The Matrix?
I know the story about the red pill, blue pill thing.
Right. Okay. So there's Morpheus. Do you know Morpheus? He's the one who offers the red pill and the blue pill. Right. He says there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Okay. And let's talk about.
You gotta walk the walk.
You gotta walk the walk. Otherwise, you're empty. Right. So where have I got here? The path is love, as I mentioned before, to be lived. Okay, wait a second. Yeah, fair enough. I'm not sure if I mixed this all up. The path is love to be lived beyond your simple needs for existence and live for a greater and beautiful purpose. So what I'm saying here is, if the path is love, which is what the basic teachings of all religions are, they're the opposite of being selfish, then you've got to. I think I mixed step 3. I forget that part.
You turned over a page or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wrote this morning. Basically, I had some ideas, but they're really hard to summarize. This is my bullet points, and a few. Maybe I'll be brave and just go through the bullet points. Let's try. Yeah. Okay. Maybe it'll be quicker as well. So. Basically, the second part of this verse was to do good deeds. Okay? And what is the benefit of doing those good deeds over just knowing the truth? When you do the good deeds, you feel the path. It no longer is just an academic idea. You have the physical realization that this is the truth when you follow it. Do you get the difference? Like, you can know things academically, but physically following through with it, you experience the reality of it.
Indeed, it's like learning music. You learn the theory and you do the practice, and the practice is whether your playing is any good and whether anybody wants to listen to it.
So, like in anything, I suppose, like you're saying, with anything, you can know what I don't know anything about music, what the chords are, let's just say, but you've got to play the guitar to actually know how to play it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next point is you've got to share the path. And the path, that, like I said, is love, which means doing things for other people. Now, there's a couple of points I want to make here. So, as I said, when I talk about these things, I try to refer to what psychologists have known for a very long time. So, there's somebody called Viktor Frankl. Ever heard of him? Okay, so he's a very famous psychologist of the stature of people like Sigmund Freud and things like that, right? And so nobody really disagrees with him. All the psychological experiments support what he says, which is basically, if you want to be happy, you have to live a life of meaning, and that meaning has to be basically a life of doing things for other people with a clear purpose, basically. Okay, so in short, it makes sense that doing things for other people should be a core part of the path. Love for other people should be a core part of the path. Okay. Now, if you don't share the path with other people, knowing that all these things are beneficial to you, it says that you cannot possibly understand the path. Does that make sense?
Yes, with the music analogy, you could, know the chords and the theory and the, whatever, bars and whatever, but, you won't play, you don't play, and it's impossible to convey the beauty of music if you don't play it for somebody to listen to, and when you play it, somebody might think, wow, that's so wonderful, I'd like to play too. And that is how you spread the love.
That's right. So I don't, just to be clear, but this is maybe going technical, I don't believe in necessarily playing music. I think there's more better ways, but I think that's a different discussion, right? I don't want to be a hypocrite because there are some movies with fantastic background music which creates a feeling, but I think that shouldn't be the main focus. But anyway, I'm digressing. Let me just turn to the main point. Okay, so and just to quote some interesting people to make to further the point, Einstein says only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile. So he's a mathematician, but he's a thoughtful person, and some people might like to listen to him because he says it. But I think he did spend more time thinking than a lot of other people did.
Yes, I agree.
And then, have you watched the movie V for Vendetta?
A long time ago.
Okay, so I thought it was a very thoughtful movie, and I'm going to give another quote for possibly fans from there. So this is all on the lines of sharing the path and giving love, as it were. Okay, Valerie, there's a core part of the story, a central part of the story. Somebody who's basically imprisoned. Okay, she says in her monologue or her story before she dies, she says, "But I hope what most of all, but what I hope most of all is that you understand." So she's passing on a message to some stranger. Okay, what I mean when I tell you that even though I do not know you, and even though I may never meet you, laugh with you, cry with you, kiss you, I love you. With all my heart, I love you. So this idea is that we have love for all of humanity. And I think
even people we never meet.
That's right. And people have the wrong idea of love, which is it's transactional, that we should get something and then but that's why society is so divided, because people only love people who agree with them. That's not real love, that's transactional. That's on, they're putting a requirement on that love.
Yeah. I think the Greeks have a word for it called agape.
You know more than me.
Right, but I think that's the general idea.
Okay, so that's the idea, and so I recommend that people who think, let's say, for Islam is the truth or Buddhism is the truth, they should try sharing it. Otherwise, it kind of suggests that you don't really believe in that message. Well, a lot of Buddhism, modern day Buddhism, it's just about taking care of number one, because it's being hijacked by Westerners. It's not real Buddhism. But let's just stick to Islam then, otherwise I'll get myself confused. So if you truly believe Islam is the truth, which is about taking care of other people, then a basic part of that is to share it with other people. That's it. The last bit,
share it with Sharia.
Yeah, cool. Doing a bit of rhyming, and if people are not if they don't know what Sharia means, it means to follow God's law, which is not something that can be enforced, because again the Quran says there's no compulsion in matters of religion. So Sharia, for example, means being kind to your neighbours, treating your mother better than your father. This is really sexist, but that's Islam. It says there's a teaching that said somebody asked Prophet Muhammad, "Who should I love the most?" He said, "Your mother." He said, "Who should you love your most after God and the Prophet?" And he said, "Your mother." And then he said, "Who should I love after her?" And he said, "Your mother" again. He said, "Who should I love after that?" He said, "Your mother" again. And then he said, "Who should I love after that?" He said, "Your father," and then the next of kin. So that's Sharia for people who don't know what Sharia is, because they hear all sorts of things from tabloid, the Sun and the Star. I would not recommend learning Islam from them. Okay. Any thoughts about that so far?
Yes, I mean, I suppose I see Sharia as the rule of law and correction of the current ills of society, and maybe helping people know if they're male or female, and that sort of thing. I think there's chapter 49, verse 13. There's something about, oh, God created us, male and female, tribes and nations, getting to know one another. The most righteous of races is, the best of all. Something like that.
Wow, that's amazing. Maybe a closet Muslim, or maybe somebody on the way there, God willing. Thank you. So let's talk about this word, sabr, that we're talking about, patience. So interesting, the reason why the Quran was taught in Arabic, because it's much more meaningful than English. So the word sabr, which is loosely translated as patient, means to be calm, to not even differentiate between the good and bad times. So not to get too excited or not too sad. So how you can so the word patient, its other meaning explains how to be patient. And that's a very common thing in Arabic. So if you want to go through trials and tribulations, you need to stay calm. A bit like all the cool superheroes in different movies. Do you know Yoda from Star Wars? The green little guy?
Not really.
Anyway, he's very calm. What about Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid?
I can imagine. But
you can imagine that you got to be pretty calm, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it helps you go through trials. But the nature... So how does that mean being the path? So I'm going to explain a few things there. So to be able to get to the state where there is no difference for you personally between the good times and the bad times, you treat them all as part of your journey towards growth. There are no accidents. As V for Vendetta said, there are no coincidences, only the illusion of coincidence, right? So everything is geared by God. There are no mistakes to further your growth to become a more beautiful human being. Okay, then to get to that stage, you have to, in effect, die. What I mean by that is to let go of your ego, which feels like death because you're so attached to it. But actually, what looks like death is a source of freedom. When you sacrifice, so for example, you might feel it's death to sell your expensive car, which you didn't need in the first place, but you only had it to show off to people. But when you sell it, at first you think, oh my gosh,
what will the neighbours think?
What will the neighbours think, right? How will people love me without my expensive car? But when you let go of it, you realise nobody cares in the first place because people got used to your expensive car, and you were quite miserable and trapped by your possessions. So there is no real sacrifice. It looks like a sacrifice in the beginning, but every time you sacrifice, you let go of what was imprisoning you.
Well, the ego, I suppose, if your ego is enormous and you have to be circling around it, defending it all the time and being mean to people to stop them from hurting your ego.
100%. There's a brilliant book called The Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Ever heard of it? So it's another. He's a, let's say, ex-materialist. He tried everything and he realized that it made him miserable. And this is one of the lessons he learned, that it was your ego is your enemy. So it's something to look at. So this idea of death, I'm almost finished by the way. I'm just going to give a few interesting quotes. Martin Luther King said, "If you haven't found something to die for, you are not fit to live." And
Well, I suppose it means that we should have principles that that we should at least be in theory prepared to die for.
yeah, something that we are so sure of that we are no longer. So you've clarified when you're willing to give up everything for an ideal that you know is good for humanity. In effect, you kill your ego, and that's the only way by which you can truly have this word patience, sabr. It is only then you are no longer wandering in the wilderness, as it were. You have a clear destination that you have committed to. Before that point, even if you're sharing things with people, you have not wholly committed. But when you commit, then you are truly free and you truly know your direction. Of course, you have to pick the right direction in the first place. The starting point, the belief, has to be correct in the first point. So there's a whole set of 4 steps: believing, actually following through with those beliefs, sharing those beliefs, and then having patience, which in effect means surrendering. And that's actually the whole message of Islam. So Islam, I talked about the amazing qualities of Arabic. On one side, Islam means peace, basically having inner peace, but not just inner peace, outer peace as well. At peace with your God, being at one with your God, at peace with your God, and also at peace with the world, the environment, your creation, right? But then the other side of that word, Islam, it also means to submit your ego. So it says to find peace, you must submit your ego. Your ego is the thing that keeps tricking you into stupid things like buying expensive cars or expensive things that you don't need, and then you're trapped doing a job you hate. And it's a constant. You're a slave every day of your life. And if you want to be free from that, if you want to be happy every single day, live a life of meaning, and the only way you can do that is by going through these 4 steps and finishing with commitment, willing to die for that cause. And you don't have to, when I say, some people might say, oh yeah, I'm willing to die for a cause. They might have empty words, but you don't have to do it tomorrow. You can do it right now. What I mean by right now is you can say, I don't matter anymore. Okay, when I say I don't matter anymore, that means when we're having this discussion, the only person who I'm focusing on is you, rather than me trying to be right. Right? And so I disappear, my ego disappears, I disappear, and you become one with everybody else. It might sound maybe a bit metaphysical or something, or airy-fairy, but in reality, the happiest societies are communal ones, where they don't believe in individualism, they believe in otherism. They're always focused on other people, and then they're more connected. Any thoughts about that so far?
I mean, what you said about peace and God, I think a lot of egotistical people tell lies in order to defend their ego, and they weave very tangled webs when they practice to deceive. Therefore, belief in God would mean belief in obeying His laws at the very least. So if you can pull someone up when they go too far and say, well, what you just said, it ain't true, or what you just said, it doesn't make sense, or what you just said, it's immoral, you can pull them back in that way. But if you're just using your ego to fight his ego, it would be well, who are you to say? And then he'll say, who are you to tell me what? And then it'll be I guess a lot of personal details, a lot of insults, and not much discussion about the actual issue.
I think you basically described a lot of disputes nowadays. It's all about egos and not intelligent argument. And the reason, like you say, is that there's no objective morality. It's everybody's morality is their subjective experience, or
The lived experience, that's the latest buzzword now. How dare you question my lived experience?
yes, or my truth, as in rather than the truth. You make up the truth as you go along, whatever you believe
There's
it
only
to
one
be.
truth, but more than one opinion, obviously.
Right, you can have different opinions, but one plus one will always equal two. Never mind whatever your opinion is. So we can only work towards whatever we have evidence of reality. You can't just create your own opinion and say that is the truth.
But I think that what has been happening in the West shows that they have been doing that.
Yeah. Okay. And so let me just see. So I suppose I've summarised all the ideas, and I'll give the second quote that I had in mind, and I think it's beautiful. It's only when we give up our own egos can we truly connect with other people. And this reminds me of another quote from V for Vendetta after he dies in the movie, and it said, "Who was V?" And he says, "He was my father and my mother, my brother, my friend. He was you and me. He was all of us." And so that's a beautiful place to be, where people can they are willing to give up their own ego, and then when they give up their ego, they remove the boundary between human beings and their God. Because to connect with God, I think it's fairly simple. It's self-evident in our nature. When you look at nature, we're automatically impressed by it. Even psychologists say that it's the most powerful antidepressant, even if you believe in God or not, right? So when we remove our ego, it's our ego that makes us try to deny the obvious, which is there must be a creator. And all of this could not have happened by accident, which is far more complicated than any computer in existence, right? So it should be the natural conclusion that there is a creator, and we should just find our way towards that creator rather than denying it. So in short, my last statement is, I'll try to summarize it like this, that when we go through these 4 steps and finally kill that ego which makes us stupid, then we remove the boundaries between us, nature, and God. Any thoughts?
And each other as well, because then we wouldn't be jostling with other people's egos to get the top ranking or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I meant by us, as in remove the boundary between us and them. So people insult me quite often, but I never feel angry towards them. In fact, I feel sorry for them, because as they say, hurt people hurt people. Have you ever heard of that one?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.